Always been witches in the world. Blood witches and fair-born witches.
My name is Nathan Byrne.
The bastard son of the devil himself.
My father is Marcus Edge.
Who wipe out our kind until there's nothing left.
Why are you not supposed to talk to me?
You know why.
Evil Dad.
Evil Dad.
Oh, teenagers, am I right?
Welcome to Cordkillers, the show about watching the stuff you love when you want, where you want, however you want. I am Tom Merritt.
I'm two mirrors. I'm Brains Brushwood. See, this is the problem with doing anything on Halloween is everybody's already thinking about Thanksgiving, and half of them already have their Christmas decorations up by the time they hear this.
Yeah.
No,
exactly.
But Bryce, what's your
Bryce
spooky name, Bryce?
Castillo.
Dice Castillo.
Dice
Castillo, maybe?
Dice.
I don't know. Someone's emailing.
Bryce Casquillo. Like the cask of Amontillado.
I was
No?
going for
Workshop it.
Bryce Scarstillo.
Oh.
Okay, we're not picking
The
favorites. It's
scarcity
just
is
a
so
brainstorm.
Oh, now we're...
What was that preview, Bryce?
That was the trailer for Netflix's The Bastard Son and the Devil Himself. This is it looks to be like a young adult fantasy series on Netflix about a young man who's got witchy sort of powers and an evil dad. That is already streaming on Netflix. It's out now, so check it out. The Bastard Son and the Devil
Is his
Himself.
dad the devil? Because it's called The Bastard Son and the Devil Himself? Or is that
I mean,
overreading it?
It's probably over. I don't think this is very smart.
Okay.
It looks cool, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a complex.
Got it. Yeah. Too much. Don't look for that much depth. Got
it's
it.
like
Yeah.
we titled it the movie with the twist at the end. I don't understand.
Don't hurt yourself thinking about it. You'll ruin the fun. All right, let's get on to the primary target.
Ooh, fight Castillo. Fight Castillo.
James Gunn and producer Peter Safran have been named co-chairman and chief executive officers of DC Studios as of November 1st. So probably when a lot of you are listening to this, they replace Walter Hamada and will report to Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav. Like Dick Cheney getting the job of vice president because he was advising President Bush who to pick for vice president, Gunn and Safran were advising Zaslav on who they thought should take over DC, and they ended up getting the job themselves. After he winds up his existing commitments, aka Guardians 3, which is coming out on May 5th, Gunn will be exclusive to Warner. The team will inherit The Flash, which is wrapped, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, which is currently in post-production, and a Batman script due in 2025. And then there's the question of Superman. Are we getting more Henry Cavill? Henry Cavill's out there saying, yeah, I'm going to be Superman. So it looks like maybe that will happen.
So there's a temptation to assume that when somebody advises, somebody in the role of director, somebody who understands and loves a writer director, loves a property and does it, suddenly, let me advise you on who to be boss. Oh, it's me. There's a temptation to think there's a Machiavellian ladder climbing, some little finger action or whatever. But honestly, I think
Little finger from Game of Thrones for anybody who didn't catch that reference. It's
yeah,
not
no,
as weird as it
I
sounds.
had to breathe between little and finger, and I really regret it. But there is something to be said about people who are good at one thing aren't necessarily good at managing a team of people to do that thing. The canonical example is you take your best salesperson, you promote them to manager, and all of a sudden you have a disastrous division because they're good at selling. They're not good at managing and inspiring a team and deciding how to do this. So it wouldn't surprise me one bit to assume that in good faith, these two didn't want to have the jobs, but instead were genuinely explaining this is what we want, to be empowered to tell wonderful stories within the DC universe. And then at some point they were asked, well, why don't you want it? And I would absolutely believe that they would resist the opportunity for the promotion, because then you're on the hook for all of the downside and you get none of the joy of creation. It sounds like it was a brave thing for them to take the gig from what I'm seeing.
Sort of. Yeah. I could imagine a scenario where Zaslav is asking Gunn and Safran who should replace Walter Hamada, who is the person, the singular person. And they keep having conversations where they say something along the lines of, well, you need the managerial experience of Peter here, with the love of the product and the creativity of James here. And maybe Zaslav just eventually got to the point where he's like, well, what if I just hire both of you instead of one person? And because that's what all the articles have played up, is that Peter Safran is the steady, calm hand. He's the person who can negotiate with people and get them on board, and manage things well. Whereas James Gunn is the one who's going to be like, the greatest thing about DC is this and that, and that's what we need to pull in, where other directors might be not wanting to work with James Gunn, they'll work with Peter Safran, and where Peter Safran might not have the creative chops to do what DC needs to do to rival Marvel in a universe, James Gunn might, because he, like Kevin Feige, loves the DC universe. In fact, Gunn said, people asked him, like, what do you think Kevin Feige's going to think? He's like, he thinks it's great. He was one of the first people I called, because he's one of the few people who can understand what I'm about to do.
Yeah. Well, and I can equally, I like the scenario you painted, because I can totally see two people in a room, each explaining why, well, I can't do the job because while I'm good at this one part, you need somebody who can do the other thing. And then at some point it's like, all right, you two, get a room in the office suite. Join us.
What do you think about the James Gunn side of this, the creative side of this? I mean, it is true that his Suicide Squad and Peacemaker have been two of the most well-received DC enterprises. He certainly did a fantastic job with Guardians as well. It's quite beloved in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But those are all things he did, not him setting out a vision for other people.
So I would say, and I would hope, that the same engine that drives him on set to write amazing things, built into that, this is what I'm picturing, metaphor incoming. If you picture kind of a pyramid hierarchy or whatever, yeah, you've got execution at top, you've got the actual ability to know what to write and have the vision. But at the very beginning, before all of that, at the base of the pyramid, is the ability to discern what is good and what is not. And my guess is that doesn't go away. So even though he's in a different role, if he is willing to put in the time and the focus and actually look through all the garbage and patiently explain, this is why this is not working, to fix it, if I were on set, I would do blank, 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 and blank. But at the very least, you must eliminate blank, 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 and blank. So he could be very, very good. And you want to talk about somebody who knows what it's like to be boots on the ground in the trenches, somebody who's promoted from within to be, I mean, another metaphor, this is somebody who we've seen as a foot soldier, seen somebody as a squadron commander, and, give him the job of general. I mean, I think, I believe he's an excellent communicator, and we watched Disney cancel him, and we watched him weather the storm so well that Disney came back and said, hey, no hard feelings about that whole throwing you under the bus thing. Would you like to come back and finish that? I mean, those are the marks of stewardship and of stoicism and being a good communicator that I would expect would be an exceptional leader.
Now, the next question I have, because I agree with all of that, is, do you think he should do? If you were James Gunn, what would you do with the DC universe? Because up until now, it's been sort of a like, well, we've got a little bit of a consistent thing around Superman and Batman and Aquaman. People kind of like that, but we're also going to go wild and do Joker stuff and other things. And we're going to have a Joker sequel, but it won't be really in the same universe as this. And we'll just kind of tear up the continuity card. Should he try to emulate the MCU, or should he go more and lean farther into that direction of silos within the DC universe?
Not in the least should he attempt to do anything like what they accomplished in the first 20-something episodes of the MCU. As a matter of fact, the best parts of the MCU, and I mean best by the numbers, by the metrics, according to RottenTomatoes.com, the best Marvel movie of the last 20 years was Logan, something that absolutely was divorced from the MCU. It was a Marvel property in a sideways timeline. And in fact, to get to a place where Marvel's able to tell new stories, they had to break their entire universe, almost literally in the forms of fracturing, the multiverse and so on, and explaining that to people. DC has never had that problem, does not have this problem. DC, who did a Batman movie and then 5 years later rebooted Batman again, which I said would never work, and then turns out Christopher Nolan knows how to direct a good movie. And Christian Bale, pretty good Batman, turns out.
What Marvel has been doing, what Kevin Feige has been doing, I think in some ways could be seen as taking what Marvel did as a comics universe and borrowing from it to do the same for the cinematic universe, which is retconning things to provide continuity when it makes for a good series. We'll explain this because we have a multiverse and blah, 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 blah. I wonder if James Gunn can borrow other parts of what DC has done, where sometimes you just, you have two different Superman comic series telling two different Superman stories that are independent of each other. You have your Action Comics and you have your Superman, and they just barrel on next to each other. Can he steal something from that? I don't know what it looks like in the cinematic universe. Could he do that instead? And just say, well, we're just going to tell good stories, good miniseries, if you will, except they're movies, not miniseries and comics.
I mean, everything you're describing sounds like a very James Gunn decision. Whether or not he could pull it off, certainly if he was behind the camera or on set, I believe he could. Whether or not he could do it as the general in charge, who knows? Yeah. But I look forward to bizarre corners of the DC universe being brought to light. I can't wait for a Plastic Man movie. Just all kinds of bonkers stuff.
Just free yourself to just be like, yeah, we're making a Plastic Man movie. It doesn't have to fit in with anything else. And Superman could be in it and could be played by somebody who's not Henry Cavill because it's not part of that series. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what he does. My last thought on this is that what Kevin Feige brought to his role was, I recognize that you all directors have various talents, so I'm just going to set boundaries and let you tell your kind of story. So if you're Taika Waititi, you're going to tell a much more entertaining comical story of Thor than a different director will. And that's fine, as long as you're within these boundaries. I wonder if James Gunn is able to do the same.
Man, I don't know whether or not he'll be successful, but I would be shocked if he couldn't. Like, there's a difference between whether he can and whether he will. I can't speak to whether he will, but everything I've seen so far tells me he can.
That there's no reason he couldn't.
Right.
The only difference between him is that he's got more of a director ego. Like, I've done this, I've done that. And that can get in your way if you're talking to somebody who's like, well, but what if I do this? Kevin Feige might be more willing to go like, sure, whatever, man, that's fine. And James Gunn would be like, well, but the problem with doing that is because when I was directing blah, 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 blah.
I don't know, dude. During the Sony email hack, I don't think I really plowed into them, but like there were what were alleged to be emails of Kevin Feige giving notes on DC properties that he had seen screeners of. And it's like all of them pitch perfect. And he was like, Kevin Feige did not have a problem saying, this makes no sense. Why are you doing this? Yeah. Seems like you should do this. You don't need to look, he's friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. I understand why you're doing this way. And then he goes on to later have that exact line where Tony Stark says, why don't you just be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man instead of all of this? It's as though he's speaking directly to Sony in that moment.
Yeah. No, that's a very, very good point. Well, we like to take notes from our boss.
Yeah, but the problem is most of you guys, and we're sorry, a lot of you guys only have 1, 2, 3, 5 bosses. We're on a quest to get as many bosses as possible and to get as many
all the
notes as
notes.
possible. All
Absolutely.
the notes, all the bosses. We're pretty much the best talent out there. You can hammer us around and we'll celebrate your notes and read them live on the air if you head on over to patreon.com/Cordkillers. That's where you can keep us loud, live, and independent. You get your own RSS feed. You get exclusive access to our After Talk segment where we share secrets with you that sometimes befuddle some of you. As a matter of fact, there was a really, really good email I got from somebody in our After Talk segment asking whether or not movies should be canceled along with the issues that were associated with them. And I wrote back to our boss saying, oh, no. We're not saying the movie's bad. I was asking in the After Talk segment whether or not we wanted to have a public discussion about this highly thorny issue regarding the movie. All of that is possible. It's like an interactive video game that you get to participate in. Be our boss. Head on over to patreon.com/Cordkillers.
Let's talk about how to watch. All right, let's dip back into the history of Cordkillers. In fact, Cordkillers' predecessor, Framerate. Let's even move back beyond that. The roots of Cordkillers and Framerate, from where I sit, came with my coverage of cord cutting in its earliest days at CNET. And back then, in January 2007, I covered Netflix launching its streaming version of its service. In May of that same year, the online video platform Grouper became Sony's Crackle. In October 2007, Hulu launched. And then things were quiet in the streaming world till around 2014. That's when we got CBS All Access and HBO Now, the first version of HBO you didn't need a cable subscription in order to stream online. 2018 brought us ESPN Plus. 2019 was the Plus avalanche. Disney Plus, Apple TV Plus, BET Plus. 2020 saw Peacock and HBO Max. 2021 brought us Discovery Plus and the change of CBS All Access to Paramount Plus. And along the way, there were a lot of smaller launches. I can't name them all, but your Crunchyroll, your Shudder, your BritBox, which brings us to 2022. GammaWire notes that even when you consider services with less than 1 million subscribers, no major streaming services have launched in 2022. And there are no announcements for new services in 2023. Folks, you've been honest. You've been talking to us saying, when will it end? Too many services and they just keep adding more. Well, Brian, it looks like we're at peak services. Is it time to start the Deadpool?
Yeah, well, Deadpool would imply anybody would ever admit that they failed and are giving up. Instead, what we're going to see is much like a gazelle might insist it's still rocking at being a gazelle while being digested by a lion. I think that's what we're going to see in the streaming space. Nobody's going to admit to ever failing. I mean, right? Everything's going to get bought and merged and
I think you'll get some actual shutdowns. I think you'll get some actual, like, we are closing this service, because we've seen that. We've seen a couple of them just get fully shut down. But I think you're right. The bigger ones are probably just going to get eaten. And my guess is they will get eaten when their companies get eaten. I was talking to someone who was in the industry, and they were pointing out
sources familiar with the matter.
Yeah, there's a clock on when Warner Brothers Discovery can sell itself again. So nobody can go acquire Warner Brothers Discovery right now because of the terms of their spin-off agreement, their merger agreement. There's also a clock on when Comcast and Disney have to agree on the buyout terms of Hulu. And there's this whole public dance where the Comcast folks are out there, pointing out how awesome Hulu is, and they'd be happy to buy it to try to drive up the price that they're going to get from Disney. But within the next couple of years, both those clocks are going to run out. And so we're in a quiet period because everybody's waiting to see who does what then. Once those clocks run out, we'll know how much Comcast is going to get from Disney, because it's almost unthinkable that Disney would sell Hulu to Comcast. Could happen, but it's probably not going to happen. But everybody's waiting to see how much Comcast gets and what they use that money for. And then whether it's Comcast or somebody else, who's going to try to buy Warner Brothers Discovery, because a lot of the conventional wisdom is that it's just waiting to get snapped up by somebody, whether it's Disney, whether it's Comcast, whether it's Amazon, Netflix, I don't know. And then you will start to see everybody else go. Paramount is a likely target. Lionsgate is a likely target. And you'll just get a bunch of consolidation. And so when that happens is when you see, oh, Paramount Plus has been folded into whoever acquired Paramount, stuff like that. So I feel like we're just going to be coasting here for a couple of years.
A couple of thoughts pop into my mind. The very last thing that you mentioned, I was like, that sounds like it's something we've been through. And I realized I was thinking of Ultraviolet and about how they're like, congratulations, your stuff is now on Vudu or what have you. The other question I have is, do you think that on that great list beginning in 2007, is there room to fudge it back 2 years and include YouTube on that list? Because YouTube didn't set out to be a streaming giant, but they most certainly are at this moment.
I thought about that, and I classed YouTube differently, because as soon as you include YouTube, you're including creator videos, right? You're not including studio-led production. So I drew the line at studio. Netflix, Peacock, et cetera. These are all studio-led productions, because once you throw YouTube in there, well, YouTube is arguably as big or bigger than a lot of these, certainly stream-wise, certainly revenue-wise. And then you have to start saying, well, what about TikTok? What about the, many, I'm trying to think of the French one that's out there. And it starts to feel like, well, that is a valid space and a valuable space, but it's kind of like comparing apples and pears. Not exactly not the same, but it's more useful to draw the line and talk about what's going on within the studio-led production thing.
Although I do
because I think it's different.
I think you could draw a line with the announcement
Daily
of
Motion,
YouTube Red, which was what, 2012 or so?
YouTube Red, YouTube Premium, whatever they called it, different
Right.
things.
Once
over the
they
years,
started
when
writing
they were
checks
trying to do
directly to
originals.
creators, they entered that clubhouse. And up
And
until
then
then,
they
they were
left it.
just a distribution platform that, made ads. And although back in 2005, it was nothing but piracy. It was piracy, the site.
And well, the monkey at the zoo. It was those two things. The very first YouTube video.
Oh, was it really?
I thought it was an elephant.
Yeah, it was. Was it an elephant? Maybe it was an elephant. I always remember it as a monkey, though. But anyway, yeah, I think YouTube flirted with getting into that space. That's how we got. Oh yeah, is it an elephant? Yeah, it is an elephant. Look at that.
Look at that.
But that's how we got. That's how we got Cobra Kai. Right.
Right. Which has gone off on its own. That was another question I had is do we count like properties that want to remain independent? But it occurs to me that of all the over-the-top services we're talking about, everybody owns their content. They just sort of rent it out to people at various studios at various times.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there is a useful division between like this kind of content that is traditionally on television, and the studio production quality of it, and the high quality creator content that you, for instance, and me, make that goes on YouTube that is a little more Wild West, and YouTube native, so to speak.
So here's a question I have. If what we want is maximum choice, convenience, fidelity, we want the best of everything.
Choice.
Well,
do we want choice? People seem to not want choice.
But we also like simplicity. I mean, look, we can want all of the highly contradictory things at the same time.
Sure. Okay, gotcha.
Given that we want everything, should we be cheering for companies to fold into other companies? Because otherwise, like, does that take us right back to cable? Does that take us back to the same position of, only having one choice, and that's the all-you-can-eat buffet where you only eat 3 items, but you pay for everyone else?
Yeah, and that is what I've constantly said to people when they complain about there's too many services is don't get them all. It's going to shake out. Pick the ones that you like. Don't feel like you have to watch everything. This isn't cable television where you get all the channels whether you watch them or not. Pick the ones you want to watch. And I think we're now at the moment where that picking is going to make a difference because no one else is entering the market. So now your choices are really going to affect things, which is why we've seen on the past couple of shows, we've talked about these surveys that say more people are cutting subscriptions and yet more people have multiple subscriptions. And it seems like, well, if they're cutting subscriptions, why are they keeping multiple subscriptions? It's because they had many subscriptions and they're now cutting down to just the ones that they feel like they have to have. And as that happens, there's going to be winners and losers, and there's going to be ones that go out of business. Now to circle that back around to your question, how many do we want left? How many is a healthy competition? Because I don't think we end up going back to cable where there's one distributor choking off the point and saying, you have to go through us to get anything. I don't think you're going to get that, but I do think we'll land on, I don't know, 3 to 5 big ones and maybe a half dozen or more smaller ones that get added on out there.
So this is let's define failure, because we both agree that a collapse of everything that we're hoping for would be going back to just one way to get everything, and you have to take everything or nothing.
Yeah.
But I also understand the paralysis of choice, the complete balkanization of everybody who makes any, we're the network that only does the 3rd episode of season 2 of this one series. There's some moment you want to cut that off. And so to that extent, you do want to see some amount of consolidation. And like we talked about, I think HBO Max has done a wonderful job of combining a lot of garbage television with a lot of really good TV, and I just tend to watch the really good TV. What I worry about is I don't know what the right number is, and this is where I remind everyone, cordkillers@gmail.com. Write in and take your guess. Stake your bet. At some point, the consolidation is going to reach a small enough number of haves over the have-nots that it will no longer be a credible threat that I don't need your service, I'm going to go somewhere else. And instead, they're going to start asking for things like a year-long contract so that you can get the best price. They're going to lock you in, and they're not going to make it easy to unsubscribe, because basically, as they get closer to a cartel and oligopoly or what have you, they're going to start acting like one, which is exactly what cable was. That's cable/satellite.
Cable had such a lock on the market that it was, even if you had a choice like satellite, it was a difficult choice. It was, some people are like, yeah, but then I have to call a person and they come out and go on my roof. And so a lot of people just didn't want to do it, even though it was a choice. The pressure you have here will be different. There's no pressure on distribution. You can always find somebody else because it's the web, right? It's the internet. The question will be, who's got the content? And there will be native content, like what Netflix makes, like NBC Universal making shows for Peacock. And there will be non-native content, like a Lionsgate or a Sony, who aren't operating their own streaming services, or their streaming services that they operate are smaller enough that they're going to make more money selling things out to other people. At which point, there is a pressure of those smaller companies saying, well, if you're not doing as well and people aren't using your service, I'm going to move and take my deal somewhere else, which means that you as a consumer can vote with your feet and say, well, I really like all that Hallmark stuff that's on that service.
Oh, that's interesting.
But it's too expensive and they're trying to do contracts. So I'm going to go to Netflix, which has some similar stuff. And if enough people do that, the Hallmark stuff then goes, well, we're not getting the money out of you anymore. We're moving over to Amazon. And so you got a lot more wiggle room in there for competition.
You bring up a really good point in that mobility for consumers is important, but equally important is mobility for producers. The ability for them to say, we don't like your deal now that our 3-year engagement is over. We're going to take it somewhere else. I'd rather they had 10 different places to take their deal and shop it around rather than 3. Also, Bryce posted something really wise in the chat just now. Can you share what you put in there?
Oh, yeah. Well, before Disney Plus was launching, they were making the big sell to everyone like, hey, lock in your low price for 3 years. And then after those 3 years, they raised the prices. So nobody really locked in anything. But HBO Max
Well, they
did the
locked
same
it in for 3 years.
But they didn't change the price during. Oh, it doesn't matter. But HBO Max did a very similar thing of prepay for a year, we'll give you a cut, which I don't think is. I think that's smart to offer, and these streaming services know that consumers are getting very price conscious, especially with all of the news of price hikes. No one's bringing prices down, so we're already seeing some of the annual.
Well,
I think that's really smart to sell a contract not as a lock-in, but as an option. Like, you can pay monthly. We're not going to stop you from paying monthly, or you can get a cheaper deal, and go with the year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what success looks like for sure, but cordkillers@gmail.com.
Yeah, we are cresting the roller coaster into a new era of cord cutting, and if you know the answer, well, tell us so that we can all benefit from it.
By the way, I just realized I totally walked past your question of, is it time to start a Deadpool? And I realized no, because I don't want to see any of them fail. Like, I love choice, so I guess that all feels icky to me. Would be the answer to your question.
Yeah, no, fair enough. All right, let's talk about what to watch in Under Surveillance.
I like real estate. It's all about location.
Speaking of Henry Cavill, season 3 of The Witcher is coming next year with Henry Cavill as Geralt of Rivia. And Netflix says it's going to make a season 4, just not with Henry Cavill. In fact, they did an interesting thing and had Henry Cavill and Liam Hemsworth both come out and say, congratulations, Liam Hemsworth is going to take over as Geralt of Rivia in season 4. They didn't give a reason why this is happening. One suspects it has to do with Cavill being Superman, but what do you think of just full on just recasting it and saying like, yeah, we're all happy with this?
We've seen a lot of recasting, sometimes working well, sometimes not. We saw a little bit of that in Game of Thrones, but a character this major, I mean, unless they die and regenerate as another iteration of themselves, we don't see very often.
Well, and you will sometimes see this happen under the rug, like, a contract fell out, so yes, so and so will be taking over the role, or in sadder situations, an actor dies, like in Harry Potter, and they had to recast Dumbledore in that series of movies. But this is just very much like Henry Cavill, like, hey, I'll be gone for season 4, but Liam's got this. Everybody enjoy. Liam's like, yeah, man, I'm so honored to be taking over the role, as if it's the most normal thing in the world.
You know what? I'm actually down for it. I would actually like it if that was sort of I don't know. We see that all the time with like Sherlock Holmes and what have you. It's only
or theater. When you
right.
go
In
see
a play, you don't expect
play.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I would love to normalize
they celebrate
this.
when it's like, Liam Neeson will be departing this role in this fantastic play, but Liam Hemsworth will be taking over the role, and people like get excited. They're like, I want to go see Liam Hemsworth before it's done, but it'll be fun to see this new take on it. I wonder if they'll reference it inside the show too.
Ooh, I hope they don't. I hope they also kind of change up tonally. I mean, we've seen this work with multiple seasons of Doctor Who. I would love to see it. I want to see a lot more change than the lead role. Of course, I ain't watched this show, so what do I know?
Yeah, and Doctor Who has it built into the plot
in
a way that I don't think The Witcher does. Unless they changed how it works.
I mean,
somehow,
ain't no reason the Doctor can't show up on The Witcher, technically.
Well, and there are a lot of Witchers.
The Witcher could go through a transformation. But Liam's playing Geralt of Rivia, according to the announcement.
Oh. Well, but the Witchers, the thing about the Witchers is that they're mutants, and so they get subjected to really weird
he can
things.
mutate again.
He can mutate.
Right?
Oh, I got a new face potion, and I'm Liam Hemsworth.
Right?
Okay, whatever.
Hey, man, I'm going undercover as Liam Hemsworth. Oh, no, I stepped on the wrong square, and now I'm trapped in this.
Liam Hemsworth forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they kind of did that.
Like that.
However, cautionary tale, that's kind of why I fell off on watching Legion, was when everybody was not in the body of the original actors that played them. And then I was like, okay, I understand why you did that for budgetary reasons. But
also, just like Netflix was positioning The Witcher as like their big franchise.
Yeah, they're doing all the animation spin-offs and everything. Yeah.
Kind of a weird look for your main actor of the main series to go away.
Which is why it's so brilliant to just embrace it and be like, oh no, this is all part of the plan. Yeah. I bet there's a plot. Element.
Maybe they jump forwards or backwards in time, however you think of Hemsworth v. Cavill.
Face potion. I like your face potion idea.
Oh, Geralt, you look younger, older, certainly thinner.
Hemsworthier?
I wonder if they're going to use the same bad white wig for both of them.
Yeah.
It turns out that's the plot device is he gets stabbed as his wig falls off and somebody else, a kid takes on the wig and transforms into Liam.
Title card, The Wigcher.
The Wigcher.
Brilliant. You know what else is brilliant is this trailer for Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special coming November 25th to Disney Plus, directed by James Gunn, future almost DC studio head, and starring Kevin Bacon, because the plot seems to be that the crew tries to capture Kevin Bacon to give him to Star-Lord to cheer him up about Gamora.
Yeah. Everything about this on paper sounds terrible. Except you said the words James Gunn, and because I watched the trailer, and because I love the idea of them doing more crazy specials like this that are canon ? You know, I'm 100% in. Watch the trailer; it looks truly joyous. It looks fun and funny and all over the place.
Much greater than the sum of its parts from my description just now. Like you really do. This is one where you really do need to see the trailer. Next year's we were just talking about Doctor Who. Next year's Doctor Who specials will be coming in November and will be exclusively on Disney Plus everywhere outside the UK and Ireland. One viewer said that they were going to get them on Canadian TV outside of Disney Plus. I was not able to track down confirmation on that, but generally speaking, Disney Plus will have it anywhere that the BBC isn't broadcasting it. There will be 3 specials. They will be the first specials under the return of Russell T Davies and will lead into a new regular season starring Ncuti Gatwa taking over as the Doctor. But up until now, Doctor Who has kind of been like in the back catalog. It's jumped around from streaming service to streaming service, but new episodes you had to watch on BBC America, which is an AMC joint operation with the BBC. And so you could get them on AMC Plus sometimes, but not all the time. And it looks like now these will just be Disney Plus. Disney has locked up the Doctor.
I am certain we've discussed this before. Is Doctor Who in any way funded that property by tax dollars or license fees or government involvement?
I believe I know the answer to this question, and you Brits that know for sure send links to explain if I get it wrong. But it used to be entirely funded through the BBC, which, yes, was funded through the TV license service. TV license is optional. It's not a mandatory tax.
If you don't want TV.
Have a television and watch over-the-air TV, you have to pay it. The only way you can get away with not paying it is to claim that you never watch anything over the air on your television. I have a friend who has been able to successfully make that claim and says, my TV is only streaming. I do not watch anything from the BBC, and therefore I do not want to pay the BBC license fee, and he got away with it. But most people just end up paying it. And so it's a voluntary tax, but almost everybody pays it. Anyway, that used to be where the Doctor Who got their funding. But I believe now there is a production company that is handling Doctor Who for the BBC. So it's a contract. And so there is still some of that BBC money coming into it, but there's also all these other ways to make money off of it, one of which is to sell the licensing rights to Disney Plus.
Right. And I suppose the larger discussion point is like 10 years ago, I think it was about 10 years ago that they launched iPlayer, and that you had access to the entire back catalog of BBC things as long as you were in England or could dig a tunnel
and paid
there.
the license fee. Yeah.
Correct. Yes. But things always get a little bit gnarly whenever a government institution or a government funded thing goes off and partners with a private institution, because then questions of cronyism and is this a judicious use of tax dollars or whatever. At this point, boy, that's got to be a thorny mess to untangle. And having said all that, it does seem like very few people would be upset with them partnering with Disney Plus, especially given the fact that originally Doctor Who was conceived of as a daily children's TV serial.
Yeah, as a kid show. Yeah, and there's a lot of push and pull and controversy and arguments about whether the BBC should continue to be funded by the license fee, and if not, where it should be funded from, how it should be funded. So any of this money that's trickling over to the BBC is also another way for them to show that they could fund themselves one way or another. It's very much not a simple issue, though. What I will point out, though, is the Doctor has regenerated less frequently than the Prime Minister recently. So that's kind of fun.
My God.
All right. There's a trailer out getting enough buzz that it's worth asking if this might be Peacock's first hit. Unless you think there was a Peacock hit already. And arguably Fresh Prince has been kind of a hit for Peacock.
Bel Air?
Yeah. You could make an argument for Bel Air. But Poker Face is a series from Rian Johnson starring Natasha Lyonne. And I'm seeing a lot more buzz for it than I saw for Bel Air at a similar point before it aired. It's a 10-episode Mystery of the Week series. Natasha Lyonne plays Charlie, who has the ability to tell if people are lying. There's a ton of stars in it, including Adrian Brody. And it's coming to Peacock January 26th with 4 episodes, then goes weekly.
Natasha Lyonne is my kids' generation's Columbo. She's got the voice and everything. That gritty, just one thing's not adding up for me. I love everything about this trailer. I love everything about this actor. If I love that there's something vaguely supernatural about it, yes, I'm in.
Yeah. And I don't know. I just get the sense that as big as Bel Air has been and as successful as it has been for Peacock, this has a chance to eclipse it. Put it that way. Whether it's the first hit or not doesn't really matter. All right, let's talk about what we've had our eyes on, Brian. It's Halloween. Have you been watching anything scary?
You know what? I had like 4 to 5 people just casually mention, "Oh no, you should watch the MCU special, Werewolf by Night." And I guess I went in expecting it to be more tied in to the MCU than it was. I mean, it's a fine. It was a fine, fun frolic with a lot of tropes from 1950s black and white horror movies. I expected some tie-in outside of there being the Bloodstone that I assume is one of the Infinity Stones. There really is nothing else. But I'll tell you what it really reminded me of is that good storytelling doesn't need good effects. They intentionally have the werewolf be just a dude in a gorilla suit with a silly mask on, and it doesn't matter. I'm here for it. I really enjoyed all of this. The CG effects on the monster, try not to be spoiler, there's a monster, were just adorable. A lot of emotes, a lot of weird, bizarre for the sake of being bizarre things like Awake, where the dead guy speaks in crappy animatronic form. It's great. I had a good time. Just don't expect anything really deep MCU lore-y out of this.
Okay, yeah, got it. Oh, nice. Werewolf by Night. Maybe I'll check it out this Halloween evening. I would like to recommend a show that's a little older, but we've been going back and really enjoying it, called Happiness. It's another Korean drama. The premise of this one is that as COVID restrictions are easing in Korea, a new threat arises caused by people taking a prescription drug that they're getting online, kind of doing an end around to the normal controls that causes them to get really thirsty and then want to eat other people. So it's kind of a zombie thing, but it's not zombies because it's drug induced. And then there's a whole situation where the government doesn't want to tell people about it because people are tired of lockdowns and restrictions, and they'd rather just try to cover it up. But then there's one police officer who ends up being immune. She gets bitten, and they take her to this secret facility to try to cover it up and test her, and she has no response. And so they sort of let her back out into the world as long as she agrees to continue to help them fight the rising tide of the zombies. So if you want to check it out, it's kind of a fun spin on the COVID thing and the zombie thing, and it's called Happiness.
It's a fun spin where everybody becomes flesh-eating zombies.
Not everybody.
Not the female character, Brian.
Sorry.
Not our police lead and her love interest yet, although I'm not finished with the series, so who knows?
I think one of them's going to get gone, Tom.
Yeah. No, it's good stuff. Go check it out. Happiness on Netflix. What should we be on the lookout for, Bryce?
Hey, I got a pick for you that ties in with our Spoilerin Time podcast. This week, we're going to start covering season 2 of The White Lotus on HBO. This is great. This is a great series, and I'm really personally excited that season 2 is back. So this is about like 3 groups of folks, some couples, some families who are spending a week at a 5-star hotel. This new season takes place in Sicily, where the first season took place in Hawaii, and you get kind of a mix of genres here. You get these upper crust guests who are dealing with the tensions and the dynamics of being around other incredibly wealthy people. But then also there's a murder mystery brewing. You know, there's a bit of a Chekhov's gun at the beginning of the season, both of these seasons, where someone died. Who? How? Where? How many people? And that just simmers right under the bottom of the show until right at the very end. So it's very cool. I like it. We're watching season 2 for Spoilerin Time, so make sure you check that out. Cordkillers.com. Spoiler-free impressions very quickly. How did we feel about the season 2?
Oh my God, I loved it. Setting it in Hawaii and having all those people.
HBO Max made Brian watch first episode of season 1 by accident.
It was no accident. Somebody at HBO Max chose to have that thing take me directly to the wrong first episode of the wrong season.
The Brian light came on. They said, "Oh, we got to redirect them to the other."
They sent me a push notification and they said, "That show everyone's talking about is on tonight. Press this and watch it."
So did you ever watch season 2 episode 1?
Yes, that's why I was late today.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I gotcha.
So spoiler-free impressions. Did we like it?
Oh, it's great. It's great. As a matter of fact, having watched the first episode of season 1 and the first episode of season 2 back to back, I enjoyed the parallels. Exact same opening scene.
Oh, yeah.
Not a spoiler. Starts off on a boat, people chiding each other about how to wave their hands properly. I very much enjoyed it.
And there's a nice little structure of each episode is one day in the resort. So you kind of always get a nice sort of return to center when you get to the end of the episode. I think it's very cool. This is The White Lotus. We'll be talking about it on Spoilerin Time, but they've got the first season up already, which is 6 episodes, and they just aired the first episode of season 2. It's coming out on Sundays on HBO and HBO Max. If you've got something we should be on the lookout for, please email it to us, cordkillers@gmail.com. Thank you.
What do you think of when you think of the word scare, Brian?
Unfortunately, the first word that pops in is cancer.
Oy.
Having a cancer scare.
That's a scary thing and not a wrong answer. I used that word as the word in the latest episode of A Word with Tom Merritt, talking to a horror author, video game designer, Cass Kaw, about what scares us and when scare is a good thing and when it's not. So it's a great conversation. If you want to hear me and Cass Kaw talk about scare, go to awordpodcast.com.
I was just
one
going
of
to
the ways
ask.
you could listen to that.
Well, I mean, you'll need a computer, of course, because it's not like you got one in your pocket. You need a full gaming desktop rig. It's the only possible way.
You need it.
And you got to get it from doghousesystems.com/rogue.
You got to get it.
Spell it right, ROGUE. You'll upgrade your system and you'll keep us in business.
You need it. You want it. Go get it. doghousesystems.com/rogue. Let's move on to the front lines.
Frontlines.
It's a big day. ESPN has sold its controlling stake in the X Games to a private equity firm called MSP Sports Capital. MSP will take over day-to-day operations of the games. ESPN will keep a minority interest, and ESPN and ABC will continue to air the X Games. But if you didn't know this, the skateboarding, bicycle trick, snowboarding X Games were founded by ESPN in 1995 to bring a bunch of people to the channel who weren't watching it because they were young and fill a bunch of hours that they couldn't fill.
Well, and this would have also been back in the time when ESPN was pretending that there was an infinite number of sports and all of them deserved coverage. So they were out there inventing new sports. I don't know if this is a testament to ESPN outgrowing the X Games or the X Games turning out to be a successful operation on its own.
Yeah, I think Disney, which owns ESPN, probably looked at it and said, this doesn't fit anymore. What we want to do with ESPN is cover sports, not run sports, not in our best interest, but let's lock up the coverage of it. We're still going to, because that's what we get the most out of. We don't need to spend our time, money, and expertise running it when MSP Sports Capital can and will.
Meanwhile, here's a tiny story. Disney CEO Bob Chapek told the Wall Street Journal that Disney is working on a way to tailor your experiences based on how you use its other products. Chapek said, if you're on Disney Plus, we should be aware of what happened, what you experienced, what you liked, the last time you visited a park, and vice versa. When you're in a park, we should know that your viewing habits are on Disney Plus. For example, if you rode Pirates of the Caribbean at the park, you might get special Pirates of the Caribbean programs that show up on your Disney Plus. And Chapek wouldn't say when this might happen, cryptically saying the company is putting the arms and legs on it right now. So this isn't about expanding data collection. Disney already has all this data. The question is, how do you feel about Disney using what it knows? I had a hard time even reading that article. Tom, everything about this grosses me out. I don't know.
But they already know it.
I know.
It's not like they're collecting data about you. It's not like it isn't just sitting there on their servers. They're just saying, is it okay for us to act on it, basically? And I have the same visceral reaction as you too, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but when I'm sitting watching Disney Plus and I know they know I like Star Wars because I always go to Galaxy's Edge when I go to Disneyland, I will probably sit there and criticize them. Why aren't you recommending the things I like when you know this about me? So, I kind of think it's fine for them to do this, as long as they're above board that they're doing it and letting you know. I got no problem with it.
There's a fair bit to unpack on this, and we'll talk about it in after talk. That's the name of the segment.
Now, if you don't want Disney to know stuff about you, that's a different thing. But then you wouldn't be using Disney things. So yeah, we'll talk about it on after. Comcast. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I stated very, very briefly, I don't want to see Hamlet, and in the middle of Hamlet have them say, I see Brian Brushwood is here in the audience with his 3 daughters named blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, not a fan.
He
that
would
would
love
be
that.
in front of everyone else.
He would love that.
Which would be
Okay.
also he probably would love
I would
that,
act like I don't love
He
it.
would act
though.
like-
I would act very.
Oh,
no.
come on. No, no.
We're
I'm
definitely
just
picking
enjoying
this
the
up at
ride like
after
everyone
dark. Yeah.
else. I'm Brian Brush.
Comcast announced Peacock has around 15 million paid subscribers and 30 million monthly active users across paid and free. NBC President Jeff Shell says he is fairly indifferent as to whether programming airs on linear TV or Peacock. They say they see broadcast and streaming as just delivery mechanisms for the programming. A good thing, too, as cable subscribers continue to fall at parent company Comcast, down 540,000 to a total of 16 million. Also, I used that Hallmark example earlier in the show on purpose. Starting November 2nd, Hallmark Media, which is not owned by Comcast, will have a hub on Peacock for content from the Hallmark Channel, Hallmark Movies and Mysteries, and Hallmark Drama. Content will include live linear streams and on demand of movies and drama series. So Hallmark Media, not just starting their own streaming service, but working with Peacock to be an element on there.
Yeah, boy, this ties into our first story. Nobody's going to admit that they're dying. Everybody's going to insist that they're just fine, just living in the inside of this stomach of a predator.
And there is, from what I can tell, 2 ways you can already stream Hallmark things on the web, Hallmark TV and Hallmark Movies Now, which makes this sound more like the WWE deal that they did earlier this year of screw your app, screw your platforms, just move it to Peacock. You don't want to deal with that. Let us hold on to it. We'll serve it for you and you get a cut. I have to imagine.
But I don't know if it's exclusive.
I mean,
maybe.
Even if it's not, it could be a toe in the water, kind of like we saw with HBO Go and then independently launching HBO Now and then eventually collapsing
Well, yeah, it might be
everything.
a way for Hallmark to say, let's see how much this eats into our existing subscriptions. Maybe it won't. And then it's just additional revenue, which is great.
Yep. Google regularly includes terms in its licenses for Android and Android TV that prevent manufacturers from making devices with non-Google versions of Android. Amazon's Fire TV OS is based on Android, so TCL, Xiaomi, is that how I say it? And Hisense are all prevented from making TVs with Fire TV since they all made Android TVs. Protocol reports that Amazon and Google have come to an agreement, and now Hisense, Xiaomi, and presumably, and most recently TCL, they've all announced that they have TVs that run Fire OS.
Yeah. Turns out when several governments, including India, start putting pressure on you to have yet another antitrust lawsuit, you look hard at whether that agreement really makes sense. We don't know the details, but it seems like they carved out Amazon and said, okay, we don't want just any fly-by-night operating system on there because people will think it's us and it might be insecure. But as long as Fire OS is properly branded, which it is, we'll say we're okay with it. But I would like to know the details on this.
Open Bayou in the chat points out that Roku can't be happy. I agree very, very much because TCL has since the first time I heard the brand has almost become synonymous with built-in Roku on it.
Yeah, but that's the key here is that Android's agreement didn't touch Roku. The reason TCL could make Roku and Android is that Roku isn't based on Android.
Right.
So this really doesn't affect them, except that TCL is now also making Fire TV. But they were making Android TVs before, and Roku was fine. I'm sure Roku doesn't love it, but I doubt they hate it as much as maybe you would think. A couple other notable pieces of news here. Netflix's animated Sonic series Sonic Prime will arrive with 24 episodes on December 15th. Rakuten's Viki is going to start carrying a large portion of Tencent dramas outside of China. Servant has a trailer out for its 4th and final season. That's coming to Apple TV Plus on January 13th. Paramount is adding more than 6,300 episodes of classic TV shows to fast service Pluto, the one that it owns. New channels will show up for Cheers, Frasier, Star Trek, several Star Treks, along with lots of on-demand options for shows like The Brady Bunch, Gunsmoke, Twilight Zone, Andy Griffith, that kind of stuff. Variety reports that season 2 of Severance on Apple TV Plus will add Gwendolyn Christie, Alia Shawkat, and John Noble, among several others, to the cast. And Deadline sources say a series called Vision Quest is in development by Marvel and will pick up the story of Vision after the end of WandaVision.
That's so wild because we were talking about Disney Plus's relationship with Marvel Cinematic Universe in television form, and we were trying to picture what a sequel to WandaVision would even look like, and I guess now we're going to get to find out.
I guess we'll find out, yeah. All right, let's move to the dispatches from the front. Sean the Dad and Russ from Houston both wrote in emails taking issue with Brian's assertion that binging is part of the brand of Netflix.
As a matter of fact, most people chimed in on that. So on one side, we have most of everybody hearing my voice right now disagreeing with me. However, fortunately, on my side, Netflix is agreeing with me, because hence they're doubling down on our brand means binging with their recent statement. But I did find it, everybody had really, really good explanations. The emails were so good that we couldn't get, we have to summarize them here. But people are pointing out, for example, Sean the Dad says they named their company Netflix, not Net TV or Net Shows or Net Series or anything like that, making the case that it's all about the content and that whether or not you're binging it is immaterial. I would disagree, but that's okay. That's what makes the world great, because Netflix agrees with me.
And then I like this one from Amr. Trying not to be too long-winded with this one. Thank you. There were a couple of things I found interesting that I'd like to hear your opinion on. The first is that Apple recently officially announced they'll release Blu-rays for most of their shows in the UK. There have been some Apple TV Plus Blu-rays with some availability earlier this year, and Defending Jacob was officially released on Blu-ray, but this is the first time Apple TV or any streaming service I can think of really has publicly announced that the majority of their slate will be available on Blu-ray. Notably absent is Severance, which I would really like to watch without a subscription. I also find it slightly amusing that these shows will be available to purchase in physical form, but not on another Apple service, iTunes. Well, there really isn't an iTunes anymore, but I know what you mean, Amr. You can't buy them individually from Apple. You have to get them through Apple TV Plus. But I think that makes sense, which is just pay us a monthly subscription fee and you get all of it. We don't need to sell them individually. We want you to sign up for that subscription fee.
Yeah, but man, if I walk away from Apple TV Plus, then down the road I want to show somebody just Severance, I sure would love to have it locally that I own.
Yeah, no, I get that, which is why I think it's interesting they're putting, I know it's not Severance is the one exception here, but they're putting so many things on Blu-ray as your option for that. Like, if you want to own it. Instead of getting a download that's sort of malleable and has DRM on it, just get a Blu-ray and then you actually own it.
Yeah.
Because you get the physical thing. Well, that's going to wrap it up for us today. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us. Our website is cordkillers.com. Our email address is cordkillers@gmail.com. We're live on twitch.tv/nightattack, which is also carried on diamondclub.tv Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. We'll talk to you next time.
Hey, Tom Merritt, what's going on?
I'm just hanging out here watching this scroll go by. What are you doing?
Trying to set up a bit where we thank our beautiful, beautiful patrons, all these wonderful names.
I'm sorry, I'm too distracted looking at these beautiful, beautiful patron names going by. Look at that one. I mean, if you wanted to be one of these people, patreon.com/cordkillers would be the place to go.
I mean, they're scratching our itch, like, because we're addicted.
As long as it's consensual, like,
we're addicted to their money.
And love. Might as well face it.
Well, God damn it.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.